So I just made a video like an hour ago talking about the brand new Nintendo Switch Lite, aka the Nintendo Switch Mini. But in this video, I actually want to go over more details about this Nintendo Switch Lite and talk about a little bit more about my true feelings about this, because there still is more to actually unveil. There is more to discover about this Nintendo Switch Lite, and you probably already heard the news about this Nintendo Switch Lite from my channel or other channels on the YouTube, or maybe from the internet alone, because this thing is trending right now and it's a very hot thing. So let's talk about the Nintendo Switch Lite. Now, as you can see right here, I am on Nintendo's official homepage for the Nintendo Switch Lite, and they actually go over a lot of different aspects of the Nintendo Switch Lite. Like, for instance, we already know the Nintendo Switch Lite is actually going to be a handheld only device. So this device, like I said before, is pretty much going to be the 3DS successor. They want to hit that market of gamers who only play in handheld mode, and the 3DS, you guys know, they're not really making any more games for the 3DS. The 3DS is very old at this point, so they're just trying to pretty much replace that with the Nintendo Switch Lite. So that's why the Lite is actually here. But you can see there is the Nintendo Switch Lite. Now, when it comes to the Nintendo Switch Lite, they are going to be making this in 3 different colors. So you're going to get a gray color, a turquoise color, I think, and then a yellow color. I know some people may not be too happy with the choices of colors. You either take it or leave it, but I think they're making a gray one for the more hardcore gamers, or gamers who don't like things that stand out or look kind of kiddie. So they have that one, so you are covered. And then for people who like playful things, or just like bright things or colorful things, they do have the yellow Switch, and then they do have the turquoise Switch as well. So that's very interesting. One of the biggest upgrades this thing is actually getting over the original Nintendo Switch is actually going to be a dedicated D-pad, because as you guys know, with the original Nintendo Switch, we did not get a dedicated D-pad, and there was a reason why Nintendo didn't put a dedicated D-pad on the Nintendo Switch original, because if you remove the Joy-Cons and you play with 2 individual people and you turn the Joy-Con sideways, you couldn't have a D-pad, because then you would have two ways to actually control stuff with the analog stick and a D-pad, and honestly that doesn't make sense if you're playing with 2 detached Joy-Cons with 2 individual people. So they definitely could not have done that with the original Switch. But now, since the Joy-Cons we already know are going to be undetachable and it's going to be part of the body, that means that you will be able to get a D-pad. So that's very nice, and that's something that I know a lot of people wanted when it comes to the Nintendo Switch original. So it is very good we do get that. And alongside that, since the Joy-Cons are going to be non-removable, they did also confirm that we're not going to be getting any HD rumble support. So HD rumble support is off the table when it comes to this thing, and there's going to be no IR like camera on the right Joy-Con. You guys know I don't have my Switch on me, but you guys know on one of the Joy-Cons they do have a sensor that comes out, so that means like some games may be incompatible, like 1-2 Switch. But Nintendo did actually confirm that we are going to be able to connect up controllers to this brand new Nintendo Switch Lite. And I did make an actual mistake regarding the Nintendo Switch Lite in my other video, which I do want to clear up in this video. There is not going to be a kickstand on the back of this device. So if you wanted to play in tabletop mode, unfortunately tabletop mode is going to be a feature of the original Nintendo Switch. Doesn't mean you can still play on like a table, because of course people will probably make stands for this thing that you can plop it on if you still wanted to do something like that. But yeah, just take note, there is going to be no dedicated kickstand on the back of this device. And it pretty much got everything else regarding the actual features of this actual Nintendo Switch. It's pretty much the same Nintendo Switch you love, just a mini version of this Nintendo Switch. Of course, there are drawbacks to this thing. Of course, the biggest drawback, again, is going to be the fact you cannot dock this thing in a dock. So if you're a person that uses both modes, docked and undocked, unfortunately, it's not going to be here. Or maybe you only play in dock only as a dedicated console. Unfortunately, that's not here as well. And Nintendo did state that not every game is going to work with this brand new Nintendo Switch Lite. You will have to flip the box around on the back of certain boxes, and it will say handheld mode. If it does support handheld mode, then it will be supported on this, and that's a lot of games on the Nintendo Switch actually, so you'll have a lot to choose from when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, and most games do work on handheld mode, so it's like almost 100% of the Nintendo Switch's catalog, so you are gonna be good to go when it comes to that. But something very interesting that Nintendo, I don't know if they actually touched on this or not touched on this, which I didn't even know was a thing as of right now. It does look like we are gonna be getting our first Nintendo Switch themed Nintendo Switch Lite at the very moment. They did already announce a Pokemon Sword and Shield limited edition Nintendo Switch Lite, and here's a picture of the Pokemon Sword and Shield Nintendo Switch Lite, and this thing looks very interesting. You can see the design. It's a gray design. It has the legendaries on the back of the Nintendo Switch. It also has different colors for Pokemon Sword. You can see the left Joy-Con or whatever does have blue, and then the right Joy-Con does have like this reddish whatever color for Pokemon Shield, so that's absolutely very cool. I didn't even touch on my thoughts really quickly on the actual design of this thing. The actual design of this thing, I personally think it looks 100% better than the Switch that we currently have on the market, because the current Switch that we do have on the market, you do have to realize with the Joy-Cons being detachable, it does make it look a little bit more uglier in my opinion. Overall, I definitely like the design of this, and this is definitely an amazing design Nintendo went with, and I'm very happy with this design for the Nintendo Switch Lite. Even though I said in my previous video this thing really wasn't for me, and I'm going to keep holding on to my regular Switch because you guys know I'm a YouTuber and I have to use the dock to record videos from time to time. Maybe I stream too, and I personally do enjoy playing on the TV more than I playing in handheld mode. And also I do love the fact that the Nintendo Switch is a hybrid console. That was the main, I guess, gimmick, which is not really a gimmick. It does work, but I'm just gonna call it a gimmick. But that main principle, that main gimmick is why I actually love the Nintendo Switch as much as I love the Nintendo Switch. And like I said before, I don't normally play in handheld mode, but there are those times, like as of right now, I keep going on about this, but Super Mario Maker 2 is one game I've been playing in handheld mode and in dock. I just love the fact that that game is a very good pick up and play game. You play a couple levels here, you play a couple levels there, and I take it to me in bed, I take it to me when I'm out, I dock it and then come back and play it on a big screen. Overall, that's why I keep playing. I just love my Nintendo Switch original. And one thing else about my Nintendo Switch experience, I will have to point this out, which I don't know how many people out there actually have this as a true complaint of the Nintendo Switch, but one of my biggest gripes with the original or with Nintendo Switch in general is I don't find every game fun in handheld mode. I know that might sound a little bit weird to some of you guys for me to say that I do not enjoy some games in handheld mode, but that is true. I don't like playing them. I feel like when you're playing them on a big screen, they're fine, but when you're playing them in handheld mode, they're not fine. So if I got this Switch and this was my only Switch, some games I just flat out would not play because I do not like the experience in handheld mode. Again, this may not make sense to some of you out there, but some of you guys may be experiencing what I'm talking about. I just do not like some games in handheld mode. They don't translate well to handheld mode. Maybe the controls are too small. Maybe the analog sticks, you know, don't have the same travel as like the regular Nintendo Switch Pro controller. They're just reasons why I don't like every single game in handheld mode. So some games I just flat out would not play, if that does make sense. And let's go ahead and go into the compare, because they do have a nice chart where they actually compare the original Nintendo Switch to the Nintendo Switch Mini. You can see with the original Nintendo Switch, it's TV mode, tabletop mode, and handheld mode, which you guys are used to. And then with the Nintendo Switch Mini, they do have handheld mode only. Really quickly, I didn't even go over the price point. I think I said it before in my other video. This thing is going to cost you $199 for the Nintendo Switch Lite. And it's coming out September 20th, so it's coming out right around the corner. And this is actually some pretty bad news, honestly. This may sound like great news, but the problem is September is a month I know for a fact that when it comes to gaming, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out in September, so that's not great news that this thing is coming out in September. You're going to have to choose, do you want to buy some games or do you want to buy the Nintendo Switch Mini? I can name at least 3 games, or yeah, 3 games right now that are coming out in September that are definitely going to kill your wallet, that you may not even want to pick up the Nintendo Switch Lite. Like for instance, Gears of War 5's coming out that month. Also, the new Borderlands 3, Link's Awakening, and there's probably some other ones that I am missing, but those are some really big titles, so you're gonna have to pick and choose. At least luckily with the whole Gears of War thing, you'll have Game Pass if you just want to spend $10, and then maybe that'll make up for the fact that you may want to go for the Nintendo Switch Lite since it is coming out September 20th. But let's see the actual comparison chart for this. You can see right here that you have them side by side. Of course, the Nintendo Switch Lite is a much more smaller package than the original Nintendo Switch. The dimensions are smaller. It looks like the weight is significantly smaller too, but that does make sense since they are shrinking it, and you don't have to worry about detachable Joy-Cons. The Joy-Cons for this thing are going to be attached to the actual body. So it looks like it's going to be 0.88 pounds compared to 0.61 pounds. So you can see that's very light for this brand new Nintendo Switch Mini. I heard some people said that it is much more comfortable to use in the hands as well since it's not as big. And that is one big complaint I keep hearing with some people regarding the main Nintendo Switch. They use it as a dedicated handheld, or they play a lot in handheld mode, but it's just uncomfortable to use in a sense because it's just too big and it does get uncomfortable after a while. Honestly, for me, it always depended on what type of game I was playing on my Nintendo Switch and the setup and things like that and how long I was playing, but I do get where people are coming from. So maybe if you're a person that plays in handheld mode, this may actually be more comfortable, and of course this thing may actually even fit in your like purse or fit in like certain areas where the normal Nintendo Switch just flat out would not fit into. So I get that as well. Now it looks like the actual screen on the Nintendo Switch Lite is going to be, of course, more smaller, but it's not that much more smaller. We're talking 6.2 inches for the original Switch, and then for the Switch Lite, we're talking 5.5 inches, and it does kind of suck. I'm very kind of disappointed at the fact that you can see on the pictures that it looks like the Nintendo Switch Lite, just like the Nintendo Switch original, is actually going to have a pretty chunky border around it, and it does suck they did not extend the screen to the edges, kind of like a lot of modern day smartphones are doing, or a lot of TVs. They don't really have a bezel anymore, so that does suck. But I do probably understand why Nintendo didn't do that. They're trying to cut costs as much as possible to bring it down to $200. I would rather than get this thing as low as possible down to $200 instead of charging like $250 or $230 or $220, because I do think the sweet spot for this product is going to be $200. I think a lot of people, when they see this thing, they're definitely going to want to buy this thing because $200 is not asking the world, and especially since this is a modern day console and you can play a lot of big blockbuster games on this thing compared to something like a 3DS and things like that. On the topic of the 3DS, I wonder how much longer the 3DS is actually going to be on the market before they discontinue it, because this thing, of course, is definitely taking the place of the original or the 3DS without a doubt. So that's something that's going to be very interesting. But I'm assuming the way the market's going and the way Nintendo keeps talking about how they want to keep supporting the 3DS, or they look at the 3DS as a way to make money, I think it's going to stay around for many years to come. Maybe not necessarily like new games coming out, but I think it'll still be sold at stores for still brand new and things like that. Now let's actually talk about one of the biggest upgrades yet again, because there is another upgrade outside of it having a D-pad on it. One of the biggest upgrades this thing is actually going to have, which is pretty amazing, is the fact that it is going to have more battery life, because they did find a way to make the processor much more sufficient in this one, or just overall make it perform a little bit better. I kind of already touched about this yesterday, but this is some very interesting news. So it looks like the original Nintendo Switch is going to have 2.5 to 6.5 hours. Of course, most likely when you're playing AAA games or first-party titles from Nintendo, you're getting that 2.5 to 3 hours of battery life. When you get games like indie games or games that are not as intensive as like those AAA games or those first-party games, that's when you really see the Switch gets those 5 to 6 hours of battery life. But realistically, I don't know why Nintendo has 6.5 hours of battery life, because I think for most people that's really unrealistic for them to just say that. I don't know why they have that. I mean, it could be possible, but I don't remember ever getting 6.5 hours out of the original Nintendo Switch, even with indie games. I don't know. But it looks like the Nintendo Switch Lite is going to have 3 to 7 hours of battery. They can't give you a direct actual estimate, or they can't give you an actual how long it's going to last. I do have to say 3 to 7 hours, of course, because it will depend on your situation, how much sound's coming out, your brightness of the screen, what type of game you're playing, things like that. So it's all going to depend on what you're doing on your Nintendo Switch and things like that. So it's just going to be a rough estimate, but it does look like, for the most part, it looks like the approximate rough estimate is starting already at around 3 hours, which the Switch just got 3 hours when it first started. So that's definitely a big upgrade. So maybe if you are a dedicated handheld person only who only plays handheld, this looks like this Switch is specifically made for you, and there's almost no reason not to buy this. You might as well sell off your original Switch and just buy this as your main one, or you could have 2 Switches, because I know, as crazy as it sounds, a lot of people out there are probably going to have 2 Switches. One Switch is going to be in the dock at all times, and then one of them is going to be taken around with them, just to say they have one to take around with them. Also, on the topic of switching your stuff from Switches, like your game saves, over to one another Switch, Doug Bowser from Nintendo of America already commented on this, and he already said that some people may actually want it to have 2 Switches, one maybe for their dock on their TV, and one where they take it on the go, because maybe you're paranoid about your Switch breaking, you don't want to have to worry about bringing it with you, or you just want to use it as a dedicated console to protect it, or whatever the case may be. He did state it is going to be super easy to swap accounts or swap your game saves from the cloud over to one another Switch. So that is great news for people who are thinking about keeping both Switches, having a Nintendo Switch original and having a Nintendo Switch Lite. So overall, this thing is definitely looking like it's going to be a very cool thing when this thing actually hits the market. Again, this thing is coming out September 20th. Again, it just sucks that it's coming out at a month where there's going to be a lot of hot titles. So do you go for the Nintendo Switch Lite, or do you go for some of those other games, or do you buy both? I know your wallet is definitely going to be destroyed in September, without a doubt. September is definitely a very full month for gaming as a whole, and this just even makes it more complicated for all those people who are trying to save money or not trying to buy stuff in September. But there's nothing you can really do about this. I also wonder how the Joy-Cons are the analog sticks or the control sticks on this are actually gonna feel. I wonder if they're gonna feel the same as the original Nintendo Switch, worse than the Nintendo Switch original, or things like that. That's something that is actually going to be very interesting as a whole. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I think I wanted to cover in this video regarding the Nintendo Switch Lite. More information on this and things like this. Overall, it does seem like this is a very cool product from Nintendo and things like that, and I'm very excited for those fans who specifically play their Switch in handheld mode, or maybe getting a Switch for the first time. This may be a viable option for you, since it is much cheaper than the original Nintendo Switch at $100 off, and that may be enough for you to get into the Nintendo Switch ecosystem as a whole. But yeah, anyway, there's all the stuff I wanted to talk about when it comes to the Nintendo Switch Lite. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.